She didn't walk away because you lacked value. She walked away because she was driven by impulse, emotion, ego, or fantasy. And that's the thing about emotional decisions. They feel right in the moment, but collapse under the weight of reality. When she chose wrong, she wasn't choosing a better life. She was choosing a temporary feeling. She wasn't choosing a better man. She was choosing the illusion of excitement, convenience, or validation. And illusions always fade. They always crack. They always betray the person who trusted them. What she thought was shiny eventually shows its rust. What she thought was refreshing becomes routine. What she thought was better starts revealing its flaws. And that's where regret begins, quietly, slowly, but painfully. At first, she won't feel it. She might feel justified, confident, even relieved. That's normal. Most people who make emotional choices start with temporary confidence. But over time, when emotion fades and the truth becomes clearer, she begins to see the cost of her decision. She begins to see the inconsistencies in the person she chose. She begins to feel the lack of emotional safety. She begins to notice the difference in how she's treated, listened to, valued, and slowly the comparisons start. She won't admit it out loud, not to her friends, not to her family, not even to the man she chose. But inside, she will start replaying moments with you, the small things, the comfort, the familiarity, the effort, the way you handled situations, the way you made her feel aligned, secure, and understood. Regret begins in memories she tried to bury. What she thought she wanted suddenly doesn't feel enough anymore. What she dismissed as ordinary becomes what she now craves. And this is the part that stings her pride. She begins to realize that the man she chose wasn't actually better, he was just different. She begins to understand that she walked away from substance for something superficial. She exchanged stability for excitement, loyalty for attention, patience for inconsistency. And the deeper she goes into her choice, the more she realizes she didn't upgrade, she downgraded her entire emotional experience. The truth is, women rarely regret leaving immediately. They regret leaving when life exposes the truth about the man they chose over the man they lost. Regret grows every time she feels unheard. It grows every time she is disrespected. It grows every time she's disappointed by the new man she thought would give her more. And there will be moments, small ones, random ones, unexpected ones, where something he does or doesn't do reminds her of what you used to effortlessly provide. That's when her heart starts sinking. Because regret doesn't show up loudly, it creeps in silently, like a reminder she tries to ignore but can't escape. And here's the deeper truth she never expected. She thought she left you behind, but the emotional memory of you follows her everywhere. She thought she chose better, but life starts showing her she chose wrong. She thought her decision would free her, but it ties her to consequences she can't reverse. Her mind starts replaying conversations. Her heart starts revisiting moments, and every comparison reminds her that she acted emotionally, not logically. The more clarity she gains, the heavier her regret becomes. And by the time her pride weakens and her ego dissolves, she'll realize something devastating. She didn't just lose a relationship, she lost the man who actually cared, the man who had value, the man she should have chosen with both her heart and her mind. And that's a truth she can't escape. Only necessary ending line. That's when her regret begins to grow louder than her excuses. When you step back, when you detach, when you choose silence instead of chasing, something powerful begins to unfold, something she never expects, something she's not prepared for, because silence is not emptiness. Silence is pressure. Silence is contrast. Silence is a mirror held directly in front of her choices. And the moment you stop reaching out, stop explaining, stop convincing, stop showing up, she is left alone with the reality of what she chose. That's where regret grows. Not in your presence, regret grows in your absence. At first, she may feel confident. She may think your silence is weakness, that you're hurt, that you're waiting. Many women assume they have time. They assume you'll always care. They assume you'll always be available. But over time, that assumption gets shaken because silence is a disruption to what she's used to. It breaks the pattern. It forces her to think instead of react. It creates space for doubt. It creates space for questions. It creates space for the truth to sink in slowly, like a weight she can't push off her chest. She starts wondering why you stopped trying. She starts questioning why you're so calm. She starts noticing that the attention she once relied on is no longer there. And that's when the tables begin to turn, because the moment you create emotional distance, she begins to experience emotional imbalance. It doesn't matter how strong she acted, how confident she appeared, or how final her decision sounded, silence reaches her in ways words never could. It doesn't attack her, it doesn't convince her, it doesn't plead, it simply exposes everything. Your silence highlights the difference between the man she thought you were and the man you're becoming. It magnifies your self respect. It demonstrates your emotional control. It shows her that you're not waiting for her to validate your worth, and nothing triggers regret in a woman more than realizing the man she walked away from is stronger, calmer, and more disciplined than she imagined. She begins to understand that she didn't walk away from someone weak. She walked away from someone who simply didn't fight for what didn't want to stay. And as time passes, silence starts changing the emotional dynamic in her mind. She expected you to crumble, but you didn't. She expected you to beg, but you didn't. She expected you to stay stuck, yet you're rising. She expected you to chase, yet you're focused on becoming better. And every unexpected action from you creates another crack in her confidence. Silence begins turning her assumptions into anxiety. It turns her certainty into confusion. It turns her pride into discomfort. She starts wondering whether she misjudged you, whether she misread your value, whether she underestimated what she lost. Silence doesn't punish her, it exposes her. It forces her to confront the consequences of her decisions without being able to blame you, distract herself, or escape. When someone is left alone with the truth long enough, regret becomes inevitable. And the ironic part is, the more silent you remain, the louder her thoughts become. She will replay memories, she will analyze moments, she will question her choices. And without you lifting a finger, her own mind begins doing the work. That's why silence is not a reaction, it's a strategy born from strength. It shifts the power dynamic naturally, without manipulation, without games, without effort. It gives her time to see clearly, and clarity for someone who chose wrong hurts far more than anything you could ever say. Only necessary ending line silence becomes the echo that reminds her exactly who she lost. There comes a moment after she chooses someone else, after she walks away, after she convinces herself she's made the better decision, when reality begins to speak louder than her imagination ever did. At first, she will try to justify everything. She will defend her choice to herself, to her friends, to anyone who listens. But justification is not peace. Justification is a shield she holds up because deep down, she knows she traded something real for something temporary, something stable for something exciting, something loyal for something convenient. And as time passes, that excitement fades, the convenience weakens, and the truth she tried to avoid begins to surface. Is where the slow sting of contrast begins. She starts comparing, not because she wants to, but because it happens automatically. Human beings compare everything once they've experienced better. She compares how you treated her versus how others treat her now. She compares your stability with someone else's inconsistency. She compares your effort with someone else's excuses, and that comparison becomes the seed of regret growing quietly beneath the surface. The man she chose may have seemed thrilling at first. Maybe he was new. Maybe he was a distraction. Maybe he was simply the opposite of you at a moment when she wanted change. But the truth is, the novelty of a replacement always fades faster than the value of a good man. And when that novelty disappears, she begins to face the raw reality. She tried to escape. She gave up someone who truly cared for someone who simply entertained her. And entertainment never wins against genuine connection, at least not in the long run. She starts noticing how easily others give up on her, how quickly they switch moods, how little they invest. She starts realizing that the emotional safety she once had with you does not exist with anyone else. It's not something she can request or demand or replace. It's something built over time, something rare, something meaningful. And that realization hits her slowly, painfully, repeatedly. She begins feeling the weight of the contrast because once a woman has been loved deeply, anything less feels empty. And while she is going through this emotional turbulence, you're not there. You're not validating her. You're not chasing her. You're not proving your worth. You're not reminding her of what she walked away from. You're simply quiet, focused on yourself, living your life. That silence intensifies the contrast she's experiencing because now she doesn't just feel the loss, she feels the absence. Your presence was comfort, your attention was reassurance, your consistency was stability. And now, without all of that, she is left to face with her own decision. She may not admit it, she may not show it, she may not express it to anyone, but inside she is replaying everything, every moment you supported her, every time you showed up, every time you forgave her, every way you made her feel valued. And the comparison between what she had and what she has now becomes a painful reminder that the man she walked away from was not the problem, he was the blessing she misjudged. This is why regret doesn't hit her the moment she leaves. Regret hits her the moment she realizes the difference between what she chose and what she lost. It hits her when reality replaces fantasy. It hits her when the temporary thrill loses its shine. It hits her when she experiences inconsistency that reminds her of your stability. It hits her when she sees that not every man is you, and the more she sees that difference, the heavier her regret becomes. Only necessary ending line. Regret grows when the comparison becomes too clear for her to ignore. When she walks away, she often believes she's freeing herself from pressure, expectations, or emotional weight. She convinces herself that leaving will somehow open a new chapter where things will feel easier, lighter, more exciting. But what she doesn't understand in that moment is that as your silence becomes the mirror she never wanted to look into, it forces her to face the truth of her own choices without the distraction of your presence, and that truth begins to work on her slowly, quietly, relentlessly. Silence is not passive, silence is not weakness. Silence forces people to confront themselves because there is nothing left to blame, nothing left to argue with, nothing left to push against. When you stop trying to fix things, stop chasing, stop explaining yourself, she's left alone with her own thoughts, and those thoughts become louder than any words you could ever say. At first, she may feel relief, she may enjoy the space, she may even celebrate her decision. But as the days stretch into weeks and the emotional high fades, silence becomes more powerful than anything you could ever express directly. When she hears nothing from you, she begins to question everything. She wonders if you moved on. She wonders if you stopped caring. She wonders why the man who once gave her so much attention now gives her nothing. She wonders if she misjudged her value in your life. And these questions don't disappear, they multiply, they grow. They poke at her confidence. They erode the certainty she tried to maintain when she left. Silence makes her revisit moments she'd rather forget. Times when she miscommunicated, times when she reacted impulsively, times when she assumed you'd always be there no matter what. And as she sees those memories again, she starts noticing your patience, your effort, your loyalty. She starts realizing that the version of you she took for granted is not easily found in other people. That understanding doesn't show up all at once, it arrives piece by piece, moment by moment, triggered by the small voids she begins to feel in her daily life. She starts noticing the absence of your voice, the absence of your support, the absence of your reassurance, the absence of your presence that used to make her feel emotionally grounded. And the more she feels that absence, the more she spirals into self reflection, something she could avoid when you were still trying to hold things together. But now, without you putting in the effort, she is left alone with the consequences of her choice. What makes silence so powerful is that it doesn't push her. It lets the time push her. It allows reality to slowly dismantle the fantasy she had in her mind. It lets her see how different her life feels without you. It lets her understand that losing a good man doesn't just affect her heart, it affects her routine, her emotional stability, her peace, her sense of being valued. Silence becomes the environment where regret is born, where clarity returns, where truth surfaces, and she will try to fill the gap with distractions, with new people, with forced confidence, with temporary highs. But nothing truly fills the space you once occupied because the connection wasn't ordinary. And when the distractions fade, as they always do, the silence remains. And the silence reminds her that the cost of walking away was higher than she realized. Only necessary ending line silence becomes the force that makes her finally confront the truth she tried to escape. What she doesn't expect, what she never anticipates, is how regret slowly turns into a deep emotional weight she can't shake off. At first, she tries to power through it. She distracts herself, convinces herself she made the right choice, surrounds herself with noise so she doesn't have to hear the truth whispering in the back of her mind. But regret is patient, regret is persistent. Regret doesn't need to scream. It simply waits for the quiet moments when her guard is down, and when it hits her, it hits hard, not because you punished her, not because you chased her, and not because you tried to make her see your value, but because time exposes a truth she didn't want to see. She lost something real, and now she has to sit with that loss. A regret becomes heavier as time goes on because she starts to realize something most people discover too late. Rare men don't stay available forever. She thought she could make a choice today, walk away, live freely, and come back whenever she felt ready. She assumed you would always remain an option, always remain the steady presence she could rely on. But when your silence showed her that you're not waiting, not stuck, not holding on like before, the regret becomes deeper than simple nostalgia. It becomes fear. Fear that you misread the situation, fear that you found peace in her absence, fear that she underestimated your strength, fear that she overestimated her importance in your life. As this fear grows, her regret becomes tied to her identity. She starts questioning her judgment. She starts wondering why she let ego, emotion, or temporary feelings push away someone who genuinely cared. And that's when regret becomes painful, not because she misses what she had, but because she sees the role she played in destroying it. She sees the moments where she miscommunicated, the moments where she reacted instead of listening, the moments where she pushed you away, expecting you to pull her back. But when you didn't, that's when the regret became real. Time forces her to recognize something even deeper. The new people she meets don't give her the same emotional comfort you gave. They don't provide the same loyalty, the same calmness, the same consistency. She compares without meaning to. She judges without wanting to. And every comparison leads back to you not because you were perfect, but because you were genuine. And genuine becomes the rarest quality in her world once she leaves it behind. Then there's the regret of missed potential. She starts thinking about what you could have built together, who she could have become by your side, how different life would feel if she had stayed grounded instead of walking away. She realizes she didn't lose a man, she lost a future. She lost a version of herself she can't get back. And that is often the kind of regret people carry for years because it's tied to both emotional and personal growth. But here's the part she never saw coming. Regret becomes worse when she sees you evolving, when she sees you more peaceful, more confident, more focused, when she sees you leveling up instead of breaking down. Nothing intensifies regret like watching someone you pushed away become the man she always hoped he'd become. But now without her, that's when regret doesn't just hurt, it stings, it lingers. It affects her deeply and privately because she knows she can't undo the past. And the worst regret of all is the realization that you didn't change to make her jealous. You changed because losing her pushed you toward your true potential. And that makes her feel the weight of her decision more than anything else ever could. Only necessary ending line regret becomes her quiet punishment, growing heavier each day as she realizes what she lost is something time won't easily bring back. What she eventually discovers, often slowly, often painfully, is that the door she once assumed would always be open no longer swings so easily. She thought she could walk away, figure herself out, explore her options, follow her impulses, and come back to you whenever the loneliness settled in or the fantasy collapsed. She believed, like so many do, that a good man is permanent, unconditional, unchanging. She underestimated time, she underestimated your growth, and most of all, she underestimated the power of silence to transform not just her, but us as you. By the time she feels the full weight of regret, by the time the silence is pressed on her long enough to reveal truth she avoided, she finally reaches the point where she wants to come back. But what she doesn't realize is that the man she left behind is not the same man standing now. Silence changed her, yes, but it also changed you. While she was busy convincing herself she would return when she was ready, you were slowly outgrowing the version of yourself that tolerated uncertainty, disrespect, and emotional imbalance. You were learning, healing, evolving. You were building a life that no longer revolves around the approval or presence of someone who walked away. And when she decides to reach back into your world, expecting the old emotional dynamic, expecting the same softness, the same patience, the same availability, she's greeted with a version of you she didn't expect, a version who no longer needs her, a version who's not angry, not bitter, but simply uninterested in reopening old wounds. That shift hits her harder than any argument, any breakup conversation, any goodbye ever could, because she realizes the power was never in the chase, never in the words, never in the emotional tug of war. It was always in your choice. She tries to reconnect in subtle ways at first, like a small message, a nostalgic reminder, a casual check in, but you respond calmly, neutrally, without the attachment that once defined you. She used to hold the emotional advantage. Now she feels the ground beneath her slipping. She wanted to come back to where you were, but you're not there anymore. You're somewhere higher, stronger, more grounded. She feels it immediately. And for the first time, she confronts the possibility that she waited too long, played too many games, made too many assumptions. The hardest truth for her to accept is that the silence she thought would keep you tied to the past actually helped you break free from it. And when she finally musters the courage to express her feelings or attempt reconciliation, she faces the realization that your heart no longer responds the way it once did. She senses it in the tone of your voice, the calm in your responses, the absence of longing. She sees it when she looks at your life and notices it's fuller, more disciplined, more meaningful. You're no longer the man she left, you're the man she wasn't ready for. And that's when she understands the final irreversible consequence of her choice. So you don't need her anymore, not out of spite, not out of pride, but because you grew. And when a man truly grows, he doesn't return to what hurt him. He moves toward what strengthens him. She may come back with apologies, explanations, or emotional realizations, but she can't undo the time that passed or the man you've become. And that is the moment she feels the deepest regret, not just losing you, but losing access to the version of you she never thought would outgrow her absence. Only necessary ending line by the time she returns. She realizes the door she once took for granted no longer leads to the man she thought would always be waiting.